creation. I'm so glad you came back to continue our story. We're reading a chapter book right now, and it's called The Wind in the Willows by Kenneth Grahame. We are currently on chapter 3. So if you want to find out what happened in front of chapter 3, be sure to go back and watch the last 2 videos on it, okay? So here we go. Chapter 3 is called The Wild Wood. For a very long time, Mole had wanted to meet Badger. Everyone knew Badger, or knew of him. Although he was rarely seen, he seemed to have great influence on all the animals. Rat always avoided the subject of a visit. Badger'll turn up some day or other, and then I'll introduce you, Rat would say. Mole was disappointed. Why don't you invite him for dinner? He asked. He wouldn't come, replied Rat. Badger hates society and invitations and that sort of thing. Then why don't we call on him? Mole asked. He wouldn't like that at all, Rat said, quite alarmed. He's very shy. Besides, it's out of the question because he lives in the middle of the wild wood. You told me that the wild wood was safe, Mole said. It is, replied Rat, but it is a long way from the river. For a long time, Mole had to settle for this answer. It wasn't until summer was long past that he got his big chance. During the winter, Rat went to bed early and woke up very late. So Mole had a lot of time to himself. One afternoon, while Rat was asleep, Mole decided to explore the wildwood on his own and maybe even introduce himself to Badger. It was a very cold afternoon when Mole slipped out of the warm parlor and into the wild wood. At first, everything seemed all right. Twigs cracked under his feet and funguses on stumps looked like figures, but it was all fun and exciting. He made his way deeper into the woods where the trees crouched lower and there was less light. Everything was very still, and dusk quickly advanced on him. Then the faces began to appear. It was over his shoulder that he first thought he saw a face. It appeared to be a small face peeking out at him from a hole. When he turned to look at it, the face disappeared. He started to walk more quickly and told himself not to imagine such things. He passed another hole, and another, and another, and then, yes, he definitely saw another narrow little face with hard eyes. In an instant, it was gone. He hesitated and walked on. Suddenly, every hole was filled with a face. There were hundreds of them, coming and going rapidly. They all fixed their sinister glances upon him. He thought that if he could get away from the holes, the faces would be gone. He veered on the path and into unexplored places of the wood. Then the whistling began. It was very faint and far behind him, but it made him hurry forward. Then the whistling seemed to be very far ahead of him. That made him want to turn back. As he hesitated in indecision, the whistling sound broke out on either side of him. He was surrounded and all alone and very far from help. Night was closing in. Then the pattering began. Ooh. At first he thought falling leaves made the sound because the sound was so slight. Then, as the sound grew, Mole knew that it was the patter of little feet approaching him. Was the sound in front of him or behind him? It grew, and it multiplied until it seemed to be closing in on him. As he stood still to listen, a rabbit came running toward him through the trees. "Get out of here, you fool! Get out!" Mole heard him mutter as the rabbit swung around a stump and disappeared down a burrow. The pattering increased. The whole wood seemed to be running. In panic, Mole began to run too. He ran over things, against things, and into things. Finally, he took refuge in the dark hollow of a birch tree. He was much too tired to run any further, so he snuggled into the dry leaves and hoped that he would be safe. As he lay there trembling and listening to the whistling and pattering, he experienced the terror of the wild wood. Meanwhile, Rat, warm and safe, dozed by his fireside. When he woke up, he looked around for Mole to ask him for a good rhyme to finish a verse he had been working on before he dozed off. But Mole was not there. The house seemed very quiet. He called, "Molly," but received no answer. When he went into the hall in search of his friend, he saw that Mole's hat and galoshes were missing. Rat left the house and followed Mole's footsteps directly into the wildwood. It was almost dusk when he reached the first row of trees. He looked around anxiously for any sign of his friend. Here and there, wicked faces popped out of holes. He trudged on anyway, calling out, "Molly, where are you? It's Rat." He searched the wood for another hour. Then, to his joy, he heard a little voice answering his calls. Following the sound, he made his way through the darkness to an old birch tree. Out of a hole in the tree came a feeble voice saying, "Ratty, is that really you?" Rat crawled into the hollow, and there he found Mole, exhausted and still trembling. "Oh, Rat," he cried, "I've been so frightened." "I understand," Rat said soothingly. "I did my best to protect you. We riverbankers hardly ever come here by ourselves. Besides, there are many things that you need to know before you come here. Passwords, signs, and such. We must start for home while there is still light." "Dear Ratty," Mole said, "I'm sorry, but I'm simply too tired to move." Rat agreed to let Mole rest for a bit. While Mole napped, Rat rested too, but he was on guard. When Mole finally woke up, he was in much better spirits. Rat peeked out of the hole to make sure that the coast was clear. To his surprise, the wild wood was buried in snow, and the snow was still falling. "Well, there is nothing we can do," Rat said. "We must take our chances and be on our way." After a couple of hours, the two friends were hopelessly lost. They sat down on a tree trunk to get their bearings and figure out what to do next. They were tired and bruised and wet from falling in the snow. There seemed to be no beginning or end to the wood. "It's much too cold to sit here," observed Rat. "Let's head down into that clearing. Maybe there's a cave we can hide in for shelter." Mole and Rat headed into the clearing. On the way down, Mole took a bad tumble and fell forward on his face. "Oh, my leg!" he cried. "You're not having much luck today," Rat said. "You've cut your shin. I'll bandage it with my handkerchief." "I must have tripped over a hidden branch," Mole said miserably. As Rat examined the cut, he noticed that it was very clean. He knew that it was not made by a branch, but by the sharp edge of something made of metal. He looked around on the ground where Mole had fallen. Suddenly he cried, "Hooray!" "What did you find?" Mole asked. "It's a door knocker," exclaimed Rat, who was suddenly very happy. "So what?" Mole said. Rat scraped away at the snow until it flew in every direction. Finally, they came upon a solid, dark green door with a doorbell on the side. With the help of the moonlight, they could see these words painted on the door: Mr. Badger. Mole was surprised and delighted. He cried, "Rat, you're a genius!" "I suggest that you ring the doorbell while I knock on the door with this stick," said Rat. And they did just that. They heard the faint sound of a deep-toned bell ringing from inside. And that is the end of chapter 3. My. Well, we'll have to wait till next time to find out what happens. I mean, after all, Badger does not like company. He doesn't like to keep society with strangers, especially. So we'll have to wait and find out. I hope you're enjoying our story. Be sure to hit the like button and subscribe and hit the notification bell so that you're notified every time a story is posted. And be sure to share with all of your friends. Bye-bye for now.